Welcome to Billionaire Romance Audiobooks. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. It helps more than you know and is the best way to stay up to date on our latest releases. When you subscribe, you'll also get notified when we release new videos. We also love hearing from our listeners. If you have any suggestions for future audiobooks, please feel free to leave a comment below. Or if you want to say hi, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening, and we hope you have a great day. Subscribe to this channel today and join the Billionaire Romance Audiobooks family.
Passion for the Holidays. A Holiday Romance Audiobook by Michelle Love. Audio copyright 2023, BFA Publishing. Note: we edited this romance audiobook to comply with the YouTube content guidelines. If you want to listen to the full-length, non-edited version, you can grab a copy from Google Play Books or Kobo.
Blurb.
A steamy interview was the last thing I expected. But it was exactly what I got and needed from the gorgeous billionaire. This was the first time I had ever met someone like Wilder Mosen. A man of so interesting, smart and good-looking. I was attracted to him immediately. That's how love grew between us. I promised to be with him during the good times and bad times. But I just hope I don't end up killed by the man that wants to destroy our love.
Chapter 1.
Tandy Lee almost purred when she stepped off the plane into the Southern California heat. She'd been on assignment in cold and frigid London for a month, and so now, feeling the warmth seep into her bones, she smiled to herself. One last foreign assignment before she could go home to Italy and settle in for the holiday season. Speaking of which, she murmured to herself as she got her papers out for the immigration officers. She pulled out her notebook to look through while she waited to be let into the country. She thought this assignment would be little more than a puff piece. A rather eccentric young billionaire called Wilder Mosen was about to open America's first theme park based entirely around the fall-winter holidays: Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. Tandy had no interest in amusement parks. She loathed roller coaster rides and ghost trains and haunted house trash. But the fact was, she was doing a favor for an old friend by covering the opening. Tandy's travel writing was more hard-hitting, going to places off the beaten track. But when Greta, her colleague and friend at the magazine, had come to her and asked to do the piece because she had just discovered she was pregnant, Tandy shrugged and said okay. She did love California, its sunny outlook, its beautiful coastline. Thankfully, at least for Tandy, she would be traveling to just outside San Francisco, rather than staying in LA. She passed through customs without a problem and went to the car hire place. In an hour, she was on the 101 North, top down on the convertible and headed towards San Francisco. The theme park entrance was a huge wrought iron gate, decorated with cast iron ivy and holly, dusted with white and silver, and Tandy grinned. Nice touch. It gave the entrance a slightly spooky feel, as if she were going back in time. She announced herself, and slowly the gates creaked. They actually did creak, Tandy laughed to herself, open. She drove in and immediately entered a different world. A winding drive led past woods so dense that she shivered a little, fake fog being pumped into them to make them look forbidding and murky. Occasionally she would see small fairy tale cottages, lit up and welcoming, or dark and foreboding, dotted between the trees. Despite herself, Tandy grinned. She realized Wilder Mosen had put a lot of time and effort into making this an entire experience. She passed into a clearing where she saw large haunted houses dotted around a square and lit up, almost Dickensian in nature. She stopped her car alongside some others and stepped out to explore the place. Soon she realized these houses were the attractions. Step through the door of each and find something different. If this was just the Halloween part of the park, the place was massive. None of the attractions were up and running yet. Opening night was in 2 days, Halloween night. What do you think? Tandy shrieked as the voice came from behind her and startled her. Behind her stood a grinning man. Sorry, he said, not sounding sorry at all, I couldn't resist. Tandy knew from his photo that this was Wilder Mosen himself, but as she recovered her composure, she realized the photograph had not done him justice at all. Tall, about 6 feet, dark brown hair and beard, bright blue eyes, and a mischievous grin that made Tandy's belly flutter. His body was well sculpted underneath his dark red sweater and chinos. He was gorgeous. Tandy drew in a deep breath and smiled. "Sorry, hey there, Mr. Wilder. Tandy Lee from Domani magazine." "I know," he said, his tone chatty and friendly. "I looked you up. Love the hair, by the way." Tandy put her hand up to her bright blue hair, so long now she had to stick it up in a bun. "Matches your eyes," she said, and then blushed. "What the hell?" But Wilder grinned, easing her embarrassment. "So it does. Do you think I could pull blue hair off?" Tandy couldn't help but grin back. He was so warm that she liked him immediately. "Nah, keep the dark, dude. It's working for you." Wilder laughed. "Glad you think so. Well, welcome." He shook her hand, holding for a beat too long, his eyes twinkling. A flirt, she decided, not that she minded. "Tandy, would you like a tour of the place? Then I thought we could chat over lunch." "Love to." In truth, she had just come to check the place out before she interviewed him properly, and the jet lag from the flight was catching up with her. But now that she'd met him, she decided, she would be damned if she'd say no to spending time with him. "Let's golf cart it to begin with," he said as she followed him out of the haunted house. "Then perhaps we can go back to the places you find more interesting later." In the golf cart they sat unnervingly close in the tiny vehicle, and Tandy could feel his body heat and smell his scent, a subtle cologne of spice along with freshly laundered linen. She breathed a deep inhale, letting the heady scent tingle in her senses. Wilder smiled at her. "So, obviously this is Halloween. We set this up mainly for kids, but there are a few houses that we only let adults in, where we can go a little darker if we like. Murder mysteries that they can solve, etc. We have a cast of actors who perform jump scares and dress up and perform skits for all ages, and of course, we have a ghost train." "No roller coaster?" Wilder grinned. Impatient. Tandy laughed. "I just always expect to see one in one of these places." "Fair enough, but we will get to that later on. In each of the themed spaces, we also have hotel rooms for people to stay in. We expect the Halloween ones to be most popular." Tandy was surprised. "You do?" Wilder winked at her. "They find the horror sensual." Tandy laughed. "These young kids today. Pesky young kids, if it hadn't been for them." They both laughed. Wilder steered the cart along a long paved driveway into the next scenes. "Ah," said Tandy, recognizing the scene immediately. "Thanksgiving." "Of course." Wilder stopped the cart and they got out. A large ship, a copy of the Mayflower, dominated the square based on Plymouth where the Pilgrims had landed, then smaller dwellings housed museums and amusements. This has been our most challenging part of the park. After all, this is actually based on American history, and we've had to be careful to honor both sides. There were 90 Wampanoag Native Americans at the first Thanksgiving, but still, some see it as exploitative of their culture, a whitewashing of history. So, it's a delicate balance. This is really the reflective part of the park. It's to calm down, get some food, and think about what Thanksgiving means, really. We also provide food for local homeless shelters too, and on Thanksgiving Day, we have our own parade. As he talked, Tandy studied him. He looked far too young to be in charge of this project, far too fun-loving to have built all of this from nothing. She knew he had a business partner, but would bet all her money that he wouldn't be as visionary as this young man. When he drove to the Christmas area, Tandy felt herself get excited like a child. Covered in fake snow, it was straight out of a Christmas card, and finally, she saw the park's immense roller coaster. "Oh my," she said and laughed, shaking her head, "it's Santa's sleigh." Wilder grinned. "Would you like a spin on it? We're running it each day to make sure it's fully operational before the opening." For a moment, Tandy felt nervous. She hated roller coasters, but this one was so magical, sweeping across the top of snow-capped houses, she had to nod. "Let's do it." Wilder sensed her trepidation and offered her his hand, and they were strapped in at the very front of the ride. Ready? She gripped his hand tightly. No. He laughed and kissed the back of her hand. Don't worry, sweetheart, you got me with you. Tandy didn't have time to catch her breath before the ride started and they were swept skyward, dipping and spinning like crazy. Tandy let out a banshee scream, her adrenaline rushing through her system. She looked over at Wilder, who was grinning at her. You like? No. And yes. She screamed again as they suddenly dropped down a sharp incline, but as they ascended again, Tandy felt all of her tiredness slip away, and she yelled with joy now as the car flew over the wintry scenes below. She smiled widely at Wilder. I'm starting to believe you are actually Santa. She had to yell to make herself heard over the whooshing of the ride, but Wilder nodded, laughing loudly. I'm actually wearing Spanx to cover my big belly, he shouted back with a wide grin. Tandy giggled. Do you shake it like a big bowl of jelly? Of course, it's the only way. She loved his silliness, his humor, his beautiful blue eyes. You're here to interview him, she warned herself silently. He's putting on his best face. But somehow, she didn't believe there was any artifice in this man. He took her to the main offices of the park, a huge mansion-like building straight out of an Austen novel. He winked at her as she looked around. I know, a fool and his money are soon parted. Seriously, how on earth did you even think all of this up? Wilder led her into a dining room where a feast was laid out for them. He invited her to sit next to him at a long table, and they helped themselves to the food, eschewing servants much to Tandy's relief. Wilder smiled at her as they began to eat. Tandy found she was starving and mostly listened as he talked, only prompting on the rare occasion her mouth was empty. The reason for all of this was simply, I love the holidays. Love them. I spent 15 years working in finance in New York, made billions of dollars, but I was miserable. So, I was home with my folks one Thanksgiving and my nieces and nephews were running around exhausting me, and I thought, screw New York. Screw finance. I want to do something fun. And this was the answer? Listen, it's California. When do we get the winter wonderland we're promised so much in the movies or on Christmas cards? My brother's kids have never even seen snowfall. Tandy grinned. So, you did this for your nieces and nephews? Wilder chuckled. And for me. I'm a big kid. And maybe someday my own kids will enjoy this as much. He smiled at her and Tandy couldn't help squeezing his hand. They will love it. So, you did this on your own? Wilder shook his head. I have a business partner, Von Corey. We were at Harvard together, and we kept in contact, both of us working in the city. At drinks one evening I mentioned the idea, and he seemed keen to invest. His involvement grew way past that, and now he's a 50% owner. Couldn't have done it without him. His business nous is unmatched, and he reins in some of my more outlandish ideas. Good guy. I think so. He makes sure the place meets regulations and is well insured. We don't always see eye to eye, but it's worked so far. I'd like to meet him, for the article, you understand? It's no problem. He's out today, but he'll be back in the morning. He studied Tandy. You look exhausted, beautiful but exhausted. Did you fly in yesterday? I know you were in London. This morning, Tandy admitted, and now that the adrenaline had gone from her system, she felt herself flagging. I'll admit, I came to scope out the place before meeting you tomorrow. Not that I didn't have a great time, she added hurriedly, and Wilder touched a finger to her cheek. I get it, but I'm sorry I didn't realize sooner. Where are you staying? I don't know yet. I was just going to book something online for this evening. Wilder sat back. Stay here. Be our first guest to try out one of the cottages. Anyone you like. Unless you feel uncomfortable, there's plenty of security guards around if you need a chaperone. He looked embarrassed, obviously not wanting her to think he was a creep. That was the furthest thing from Tandy's mind, and their gazes locked for a long moment. I don't think I need a chaperone, Wilder, she said softly, and yes, I would love to stay. He looked delighted. Good. The cottage she chose was one straight out of a Thomas Kincaid painting. Cheesy, yes, she said, but what a fairy tale. The cottage with a bedroom, bathroom, and open-plan living room and kitchen was tiny, but outside, a little old-fashioned street lamp was lit, and a small brook babbled alongside it. Wilder brought her suitcase in for her, and set it down in the bedroom. He looked around. I hadn't actually seen the inside of this one. Ha, it's kind of sweet. It is, Tandy smiled at him. Thank you so much. It's yours for as long as you want it. I hope you'll stay for the opening. Tandy considered. After this assignment, she was a free agent, and plane tickets could always be changed. Not only that, but she wanted to talk more to this fascinating man who still had the wonder of a child in him. I will, thank you. Again, there was that atmosphere between them, and for a moment, Tandy thought he might kiss her. He leaned in slightly, then smiled ruefully. Listen, Tandy, would you have dinner with me later? I mean, if you're feeling up to it. I'd love to. Just let me get a nap in, and I'll be raring to go, She flamed bright red, and Wilder laughed. I understand, he said, and she was grateful he let her off the hook. Later then. Later. When she was alone, Tandy stepped into the shower, grateful to get clean. Thankfully, she always carried a toothbrush and paste in her carry-on, regulations permitting, of course, and so she hadn't choked him on her morning breath. Still, she felt so much better when she got clean, and after she'd slept for a couple of hours on the insanely comfortable bed. Wilder came for her at 8, and she admired the fact he'd changed for dinner into a dark gray, impeccably tailored suit. Tandy had dragged her one dress from her case and steamed it in the shower to get rid of wrinkles. She knew it looked good on her, the dark gold complementing her olive skin and dark eyes. By the admiring look in Wilder's eyes, he thought so too. He drove her into the city to one of the restaurants there, and soon they were enjoying fresh lobster and a wonderful white wine, and chatting as if they'd known each other forever. Wilder told her more about his large family of 5 sisters and 1 brother, his mom and papa as he called them, his adored nieces and nephews. Tandy told him about her life in Italy, how she'd grown from an intern at a prestigious, if now defunct magazine, to a freelance travel writer, to the head travel writer for Domani. If I'm honest, she told him with a smile, I'm still not sure if that's because I'm good at my job or my boss Ellie, who's also my best friend, is playing favorites. Why can't it be both? Wilder asked with a smile, scooping up the last of the meringue dessert and popping it into her mouth. She smiled at him gratefully as she swallowed the sugary treat. Gosh, that's good. My family? Well, as you can tell, I'm half Italian, half Japanese, and my family is scattered across 2 continents. My elder sister, Paloma, works in Tokyo, my mother lives in Florence, and my dad in Hong Kong. We're that weird kind of close that we love each other, but don't need to see each other all the time. But you live in Italy. She nodded, smiling. I do. My friends are there, scattered across the country. Another friend lives here, Vivian Marquet, you may have heard of her. She's married to the congressman for Washington, right? That's her. She's Superwoman basically, brain the size of New Mexico. Anyways, she and Ellie became my surrogate sisters a long time ago. It's the 21st century family now, Wilder said, nodding. More water than blood, but still strong as hell. Tandy tapped her glass against his. Word, brother. He grinned. I have to say, you're not the kind of journalist I expected. What did you expect? He considered. More critical, more distant. More professional? Absolutely not, he said quickly, obviously afraid he'd offended her. I mean friendly. Tandy grinned at him. I was kidding. And anyway, today I'm not a journalist. Today I'm just Tandy, off the record, hanging with a new friend, I hope. Off the record? Oh yes. Then would it be inappropriate to do this? He leaned in and brushed his lips quickly against hers. Tandy smiled. Not inappropriate at all, while we're off the record. When do we go on the record? Tandy pretended to work it out on her fingers. Well, it's 10 o'clock at night now, so I would say we have to be professional in no less than 12 hours. Wilder grinned, enjoying the game. 12 hours, huh? Tandy pressed her lips to his. Think you can keep up for 12 hours, Mr. Mosen? Gosh, I love how you don't play games. Never have, never will. Wilder wrapped his arms around her, and they slept until late morning.
Chapter 2.
So, what's happening today? Tandy asked him as they walked around the park, seeing more people this time. They didn't hold hands. Tandy had insisted that while she was interviewing, they weren't lovers, hookup partners, or whatever it was that they were becoming. Wilder agreed, with a mischievous grin, but so far he had behaved himself. Well, the final safety checks, cleaning, all that boring stuff. Also, the actors will be running through their roles. Want to swing by the murder mystery house? Tandy's eyes lit up. Hell yes. They watched the actors run through the first scenes and the actual murder. After they'd finished, Tandy and Wilder applauded them, and the victim, who was a gorgeous African-American woman, sprung back up to her feet, still covered in fake blood, and came over to them. She high-fived Wilder and grinned at Tandy. Tandy, this is Selena Miles. We poached her from a very promising Hollywood career to come play our murder victim. On alternate days, Selena corrected with a laugh. She nudged Tandy conspiratorially. They kill a guy the other days. Good. Tandy grinned. She felt a little weird joking about murder, even if it was fake, and Wilder seemed to notice. You okay? She nodded, and Selena smiled at her. He poached me from a bit part on one of those hideous bar set reality shows, and a 50-hour week of waitressing and auditions. Wilder's one of the good guys. I paid her to say that, Wilder said quickly, embarrassed, and the women laughed. It was great to meet you. I think they want me back there. Laters. Selena disappeared into the house with a wave. She's nice, Tandy said as they walked out of the house, but Wilder stopped her. Seriously, you looked upset in there. Are you okay? Tandy drew in a deep breath. It's just, seeing murder played out as entertainment. And I know it's a thing that people enjoy in the abstract, but Ellie was stabbed a few years ago. I mean, her attacker butchered her, and we nearly lost her. Now I guess, I'm a little sensitive about it. Wilder's usually merry eyes were troubled. I'm so sorry, Tandy. I didn't know, or I would never have suggested we watch that. Tandy shook her head. It's okay, Wilder. I thought maybe I could handle it after all this time. It's not like I haven't seen a myriad of movies and TV shows with worse. Despite their agreement to keep things professional, he took her hand, and she didn't pull away. Look, let's go to the Christmas park. No monsters and bad memories there. Unless you have the Krampus. You had to go there, he sighed in mock resignation. I have the Krampus every month, she said, enjoying joking with him, trying to lighten the mood again. Wilder didn't need to know her damage, and he certainly didn't need to apologize for how this park was run. Over lunch, she interviewed him properly, asking in-depth questions, listening to him talk about his passion. She studied him intently as he talked, and after a while he broke off and smiled at her. You keep looking at me like that, Ms. Lee, and this interview is going to end with you naked on this table. Tandy smirked. Well, Mr. Mosen, you sound like a man with a plan. She very deliberately closed her laptop and leaned over to kiss him. Wilder. They heard the male voice calling from inside the office, and Wilder sighed. Rain check, beautiful? That's Vaughn. Von Core didn't knock, just strode into Wilder's office. He was sharply dressed, a preppy type, his hair brushed back neatly. He didn't even glance at Tandy, just waved a folder at Wilder, his handsome face humorless, his blue eyes such a light color they were almost silver. Hey dude, said Wilder easily, this is Tandy Lee. Vaughn slid his eyes over Tandy's body. Pleasure. Tandy didn't smile back at him. He obviously thought she was just one of Wilder's women, she realized. It hurt to think that Wilder had other women, that he made the same moves on another girl. Tandy's from Domani magazine, Vaughn. Wilder's voice had an edge in it, and Vaughn's manner changed immediately. Sorry, for some reason I thought you were one of the actors. Sorry, welcome Ms. Lee. All charm and smiles now. That's what he meant with his dismissive look at her. Tandy shook his hand and got up. I just finished, actually. I'll write my story and come back to clarify some facts later, if I may, Wilder. Please don't go on my behalf, Von Corey said, sitting down, brushing non-existent fluff off his trousers. Man, this guy was a jerk. Tandy's staying for the launch, and I gave her the Kincaid cottage to use. Wilder's voice was tense, and Tandy sneaked a smile at him, meeting his gaze. I'm okay, dude, don't stress. He smiled back at her. That's fine. Vaughn smiled without warmth at Tandy. As long as we have it back for the weekend. Oh, you will. I'll see you later, Wilder. Tandy left the office, feeling dismissed by Wilder's business partner. She was at the elevator when Wilder caught up to her. Pulling her into an alcove out of the way, he kissed her. Don't pay any attention to Vaughn. He's an arrogant SOB, but he's a genius at business. Tandy stroked his face. Don't sweat it, dude. I've dealt with ruder folks than him. I could come by in about an hour. Wilder looked adorably hopeful, and Tandy chuckled. Give me 2 to write up the first draft. Then I'm all yours all night long. He watched her get into the elevator, and as the doors closed, Wilder went back to his office, still smiling. Vaughn looked up and studied him. So, you're sleeping with that journalist? Back off, dude. Wilder hated fighting with Vaughn. Vaughn always got nasty, and Wilder didn't want anything to ruin the happy buzz he'd felt since he met Tandy. Was it really just yesterday? Well, leaving that aside, we have all the checks in place now. Everything is signed off, and we're ready. The question is, are you? Wilder felt stung. Vaughn always managed to make him feel like a little kid. Of course, Vaughn. This park is my baby, my legacy. Our legacy. Vaughn sighed, relenting. Sorry, Wilder, it's just, I don't want anything to go wrong. It won't, buddy, Wilder smiled confidently at his friend. Tomorrow is going to be phenomenal.
Chapter 3.
Wilder slowly slid his hands down the length of her body, before burying his face in her belly. He felt Tandy shiver beneath him, and his mouth curved up in a smile. Damn, you're beautiful, Tandy Lee. I'm due to fly back to Italy in a couple of days, and I do need to go. It's going to be Christmas before you know it, and I have pseudo-nieces and nephews to see. Your friends' kids? Wilder always seemed so genuinely interested in her life, and it touched Tandy's heart. She nodded. Well, Wilder said, I understand that, but for me, I can't be away from the park just as it opens. Ignoring the flash of pain that shot through her, Tandy smiled. Then we compare schedules, see where we are. We're modern kids, Wilder, we can do this. Yes, we can, and can I make a request if it fits with your calendar? Go for it. Spend Thanksgiving with my family and me. Now, I know Thanksgiving isn't an Italian or Japanese holiday, but it would mean a lot to me. Then how could I say no? Opening day, and Tandy was amused to see Wilder as nervous as a bride on her wedding day. She teased unmercifully until he got his revenge by having her behind one of the haunted houses. When Wilder and Vaughn were snagged by the journalists, Tandy took the opportunity to walk around the park, drinking in the atmosphere and people watching. She saw how much people were enjoying the different attractions, and it made her glad for Wilder. His dream had come true. She noticed one man, however, who didn't seem to fit in with the wonder-filled faces. She guessed he was in his 50s, scrawny, bedraggled. The thing that Tandy saw in his face was sorrow, utter sorrow, and it was the complete and total opposite of everyone else's expressions. It was searing. He looked up to see Tandy watching him, and slipped away into the crowd. Tandy wondered what his story was, and she found herself coming back to the memory of the pain in the man's face again and again as she walked around the park. Hey, Tandy. She looked around to see Selena grinning at her. Hey, Tandy smiled at her. How's the murder room? Exhausting for everyone else, laughed the other woman. I just get to scream and then lay down for an hour. I'm on a break. Want to come grab a drink with me? They went to one of the bars in the Christmas zone. It was half full with adult visitors, chatting and laughing, and Tandy was glad to see that even the staff looked like they were having a great time. Wilder's knocked it out of the park, hasn't he? Selena tapped her glass against Tandy's. He's a good boy. He is. Where did you meet him? Selena grinned. To answer your real question, no, Wilder and I were never involved. I'm so very, very gay, Tandy. In fact, I think Wilder's more worried I might seduce you. Tandy laughed. Bring it, baby, he's way too confident. Selena studied her. You really like him, don't you? I admit I do. I don't usually find this kind of connection so quickly with someone. Well, he's a good guy. Unlike the creeper he's in business with. Tandy's eyebrows shot up. Oh, so you've noticed too? Yeah, Von Corey's a snake. Ain't that the truth? I never could stand him, couldn't understand why Wilder went into business with him. He's not a good person. Can I ask why you say that? With me, it's instinct, a gut feeling. Do you know something about him? Selena sighed. He treats the staff like crap as beneath him. Money is his god. He loves it almost as much as he loves himself. Tandy grinned. Wow, you really don't like him, do you? He has trouble with the word no when it comes from someone else. Selena looked away, and Tandy felt a pang of unease. Selena, he didn't. Oh no, not that. He just gets angry sometimes. I think you're probably due back at work now, don't you think? The voice made both women jump in their seats. Behind them, Von Corey stood, his face set with anger. The way he was looking at Selena made Tandy's skin prickle with unease. Selena shrugged, kissed Tandy's cheek and disappeared back to work, turning and giving Von the finger when he couldn't see her. She grinned and winked at Tandy before she went. Tandy glanced back at Von, who met her gaze with a cold stare before turning on his heel and stalking out. Tandy shivered. Selena was right. Von Corey was a creep. Tandy was still thinking about what Selena had said about Von when her cell phone rang an hour later as she walked back through the crowds towards her cottage. Hey gorgeous, where you at? She grinned. Wilder sounded overexcited. On my way back to the Kincaid, she said. Are you done with the press? I am. I'll be with you in 2 minutes. They made love, then dressed. They decided to go grab a pizza at one of the park's concession stands. As they walked through the park, Wilder nodded to the murder mystery house. That's been one of the most popular attractions, Von tells me. All down to the casting, I say. Want to drop by and see a performance? Or will it upset you? Tandy smiled. No, I'm good. I know it's fake, and I want to be supportive of Selena. They went into the house just as the players were beginning another mystery. Tandy and Wilder stayed at the back of the crowd that was watching, and as the play progressed, Tandy got into the drama. When Selena staggered through the door, clutching her stomach, fake blood soaking her shirt and her hands, Tandy could almost believe it was real instead of fake. But then she saw something in Selena's eyes. They were whirling about in her head, panicked, confused. Tandy pushed through the crowd just as Selena collapsed to the floor, and to Tandy's horror, she realized there was nothing fake about the blood. Selena was struggling for breath, and as screams went up, they realized the actress was actually badly injured, that someone had stabbed her for real, and Tandy dropped to her knees beside the stricken woman. Call 911, Tandy screamed as she tended to her friend. Selena's body spasmed twice, but then Selena went still, her eyes wide and staring. No, stay with me, Selena, please. Wilder, pale and shocked, started to control the small audience. Please, everyone, could you move outside but don't go too far? Steve, he shouted at a shell-shocked member of the cast, get help now. Steve, wake up, come on man, let's get Selena some help. Tandy, tears rolling down her face, knew it was too late. Tandy tried to give Selena first aid, she knew it was too late. The police came and the park was closed, but all of the visitors were kept there, each being questioned by a detective or police officer. Wilder made sure they were all taken care of, food and drink provided free, places for those in need or in shock to rest. Vaughn, too, was directing the staff to help out the visitors, turning on the charm. Tandy saw him talking to the sad-faced man she saw earlier. The man saw her watching them and nodded at her. Vaughn turned and gave her a chilly smile, a definite look that said, "Mind your own business." Tandy turned away to see the medical examiner's people pulling up to the murder house. After photographing the crime scene, Selena's body was taken away, and Tandy watched hollow-eyed as they loaded the black body bag onto a gurney. She'd only known Selena for a couple of days, but she had liked the exuberant young woman very much. She looked for Wilder now. His boyish face looked haggard, drawn out of it. The shock was obvious, the pain in his eyes was searing to experience. Tandy felt sick. She remembered back to when her beloved Ellie had been stabbed by a vengeful ex-lover. The fear, the pain, the dread that she might die, Tandy began to cry, muffling her sobs in her sweater. "Please, not again, not again." She felt Wilder's hand on her shoulders and turned into his arms, wanting that comfort. "I'm so sorry, Wilder, so sorry. I can't believe it." His voice was muffled, his face buried in her hair. "I just can't believe it." They stood holding each other for the longest time. "The police want to interview me at length, both Vaughn and me," he said eventually. "I may be gone for some time, baby. And look, I'm scared for our safety alone here." "I'll be fine, babe," she said, trying to smile. "I have mad self-defense skills." Wilder's eyes were troubled. "I'm serious. If you want to stay in the cottage, there'll be an armed guard outside, I swear. But the police may insist on the whole place being empty, in which case I'll arrange for a hotel room for us. Is that okay?" Tandy nodded. "But I'd rather stay here." Wilder touched her cheek. "I don't believe this is happening." "Why? Why would someone kill Selena, of all people?" "I don't know, babe." Tandy thought she might throw up and wobbled on her feet. "Here, sit down before you fall down." Wilder swept her into his arms and sat her down on a chair, his arms locked around her. "Gosh, Wilder, I'm so sorry this has happened. For Selena, for you, your dream." Wilder just shook his head, the heartbreak in his eyes all too obvious. They held each other for a long time before Vaughn appeared. Tandy studied the man. He had all the appearance of contrition, but Tandy's instincts were on high alert after what Selena had said about the man. "Wilder, they want us to go with them." "Fine. I'll be back as soon as I can, baby." Tandy went straight to the cottage and stayed there, watching the news reports on the television. All the stations had picked up the story, but they all had the same B-roll to show. Shots of a shocked and terrified crowd, of Wilder looking devastated, of Vaughn being the PR face of the park, giving the reporters practice sound bites to use. "Practiced?" Tandy murmured to herself. An idea was forming in her head, one she couldn't shake. He's all about money. He's not a good person. Vaughn had been upset about Selena not being at work. What if it was because she had to be at the murder house at the right time for the murder to happen? Tandy shook her head. Why the hell would Vaughn risk his investment by arranging the public murder of a woman just because she had rejected him? No way. Unless Tandy called Wilder's cell phone. "Hey baby, can you talk?" "Sure honey, I'm just waiting to go in, why?" "Are you okay?" "Perfectly. Listen, what happens if the park closes permanently because of this?" "Not that it will, it's just my spidey senses are tingling, and I'm playing out different scenarios in my head." "Wow," Wilder half laughed, "am I seeing investigative journalist Tandy?" She chuckled. "Maybe. Well, Vaughn handles that side of it, but we're insured up the wazoo. But it won't come to that, I swear. They think they've identified a suspect." "Really?" "Yep, some loner guy who was drifting around the park. I don't know any more than that." "It's okay, honey, I'm just speculating at this point. Will you be back tonight?" I will, his voice had softened now. I will, and when I come back, I want us to talk about what happens next for us. You and me, I mean. I meant what I said earlier. I'm very much in danger of falling in love with you, Tandy Lee. Tandy felt warmth sweep through her cold body. I feel the same, Wilder. If nothing else, I want to see if we can make this work. After she said goodbye, she went to her kitchen. Outside the door, she could see the big framed bodyguard that Wilder insists she have. She put some hot water on to make some tea and thought about what Wilder had told her. They had a suspect, and it wasn't Vaughn. She breathed a little easier. She hated to think of Wilder's business partner being capable of cold-blooded murder. To risk his and Wilder's investment, even if they were insured, Tandy stopped, her mug of tea halfway to her lips. Vaughn handled all the paperwork? What if Wilder had missed something? What was the split of money in this situation? Did Wilder know if it was 50-50? Shit, stop, she told herself. You're seeing ghosts where there are none. Let the police do their job. She took her tea and sat back down in front of the television. Her phone buzzed, and she felt a rush of comfort when she saw Ellie was calling her. Hey boo, I just woke up and heard what happened. Are you okay? Tandy felt like crying when she heard her friend's soft voice, the concern in it, the love. I'm okay, Else, really? It's a shock is all, and poor Wilder is wrecked. Gosh, how awful, I'm so sorry. Thanks, honey. They chatted for a few minutes, then Tandy paused. Else, can I ask you something? Something that might be difficult? You mean about Aldo? Ellie's voice was flat as she spoke the name of the man who had almost killed her. I'm sorry, but yes. Ellie drew in a deep breath. Go for it. When did you know? What did your gut instinct tell you about him? I mean, after you started to suspect him. Did you listen to it? Eventually. After I knew India was back and after Aldo started to act strangely. Over the years I've asked myself if I knew before that, and I think I should have listened to my instincts. He was so powerful that I think I knew if I tried to leave him, he would kill me. I knew for sure when he stuck that knife in my gut. Gosh, Ellie, I'm so sorry to drag this up, but I have a hunch and it could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, it could end my relationship with Wilder. But if you're right? Tandy didn't know how to answer her. 2 hours later, she got a text message from Wilder. On my way back now, XX. She smiled and turned her attention back to the television. The tip line along the bottom had a breaking news banner on it, and she saw that the police had arrested their suspect. The next minute, she nearly choked on her tea when the photo was flashed up. It was the sad-faced man, the one she had seen talking to Vaughn. She dropped her cup on the floor and went to find her flashlight. Grabbing it out of her backpack, she sneaked out of the bedroom window, hoping her guard wouldn't notice she was gone. She ran through the dark woods, tripping occasionally. She sneaked around the back of the large building that housed Wilder and Vaughn's office and pushed up a window, sliding in easily. Inside, she crept along the darkened hallways until she got to Vaughn's office. Locked. She gritted her teeth. He knew there was more to Selena's murder than just a lone guy seeking a thrill kill. Vaughn was behind this, she knew. Bracing herself, she smashed the window to his office as quietly as she could, snapping large pieces out of the frame with her sweater-covered hands until she could crawl safely through. Inside, she went through his desk, then the filing cabinet. The documents weren't hard to find. Wilder and Vaughn's signatures at the end of a densely worded insurance document. Tandy crawled under Vaughn's desk and switched on her small flashlight to read it. As far as she could make out, the main document was legit, giving a 50-50 split on any and all insurance paid out in the event of the park's closure. It wasn't until she looked at the small print she found it. A clause buried deep in another innocuous paragraph. In the event of non-accidental death, the park shall revert solely to Mr. Corey, particularly in the case of homicide of a cast member. In this case, Mr. Mosen will be compensated in the sum of $1 and be asked to leave the park immediately. Tandy read it over and over, trying to find a way she could have possibly misunderstood it, but there was none. Vaughn Corey had covered his bases, and now he could claim the park for himself. How the hell had Wilder missed this? She loved him for his boyish ways, for his big dreams, but this was amateur hour. Hadn't he gotten his lawyer to look over these documents? Geez, Wilder. It made her scared for him. Something so simple, so damn cruel in its execution could bring him to his knees, and done by someone he trusted. Tandy crawled out from beneath the desk and shoved the papers into the waistband of her jeans. She looked around. She couldn't do anything about the broken window now, but there was no other evidence she'd been there. As she ran silently through the fairy tale woods, she laughed humorlessly to herself. As if a broken window wouldn't alert Vaughn. He'd be on his guard now. Tandy crawled back in through the bedroom window, which was open as she'd left it. Her security guard had obviously not even noticed she was gone, another thing she would have to pull Wilder up on. Gosh, how did this all get so complicated? How did this fairy tale become a nightmare? Her phone, which she'd left behind, was blinking with messages. When she flicked them open, her heart almost stalled. Call me now. Please, Tandy, it's urgent. Tandy, I'm not kidding, call me. Baby, please call me. Your life could be in danger. She called him back immediately, and she could tell from his voice he was panicking. Tandy, Vaughn is on his way back to the park. The police are trying to catch up with him, but we think he's on his way to hurt you. The man he hired to kill Selena rolled on him unexpectedly, and he told us you had seen him and Vaughn talking after the murder. Vaughn told him he would deal with you. Baby. Wilder was sobbing now. I'm on my way. Get the security guard to bring you to safety. Get out of there. Gosh, Tandy, please. Tandy moved straight away, running to the door and yanking it open. She stopped. Oh gosh. What? What? On the other end of the phone, Wilder was screaming, but Tandy closed her eyes. She couldn't see the dead body of her security guard without losing it, so she shut it out. It's too late, she whispered, her voice breaking. It's too late. She heard the safety of a gun being released and felt a breath of air behind her. Tandy didn't have to turn around to know Vaughn was behind her. Wilder. He was sobbing. No. I love you, she whispered and ended the call, turning around to face her killer. Vaughn smiled pleasantly at her, the gun aimed at her belly. See, I had everything worked out. Selena, the ungrateful skank, would be killed and Wilder would be destroyed. He's not the only stupid one. I trusted in someone I should not have, but then if you can't trust your own father. He's your father? Tandy was shocked. Vaughn laughed quietly. And yet he sold me out. So now here we are. If I'm going down, then I'm taking something of Wilder's with me. You. He's in love with you, did you know that? After 2 days, but then he's always worn his heart on his sleeve. When he finds you with a belly full of lead, it'll end him. You jerk, Tandy was angry now, hissing at him, nothing left to lose. You jerk. Who do you think you are, deciding who lives and who dies? Vaughn smiled coldly. Who do I think I am? Your killer, of course. And he pulled the trigger. Wilder jumped out of the police cruiser as it sped into the park and set off through the woods towards Tandy's cottage. To his horror, he heard gunshots. No. The fear in his heart made it pound painfully against his ribs, making it hard to breathe. No, please, not Tandy, not my girl. He saw the cottage in front of him, and his heart leapt as he saw Tandy stagger out, pursued by Vaughn. Not thinking of himself, he dived for Vaughn from the side, knocking him down, seeing Tandy stop and come back to help him. She gave a banshee yell as she stamped on Vaughn's arm, and he shrieked and dropped the gun. Tandy picked it up and threw it into the brush as Wilder beat Vaughn into unconsciousness. The police caught up with them then and dragged Wilder from Vaughn. Wilder wrenched himself free and went to Tandy, panicking, checking her body for wounds. He didn't get me, she said breathlessly. The gun jammed on the first shot, so I ran. He got off a couple of shots, but turns out, he's a seriously bad marksman. Gosh. Tandy was so out of breath that she wobbled, and Wilder caught her as she sank to the ground. She dragged some much-needed breath into her lungs and wrapped her arms around him. Wilder buried his face in her neck. Gosh, I thought he'd killed you, Tandy. He looked up and met her gaze. I love you, Tandy Lee. Stay with me. Or I'll fly to any part of the world you need me to. I love you. I love you, Tandy said, smiling through her tears. I know they'll say it's because of the heightened emotions, but that's bullcrap. I found my home the moment I met you, Wilder. The very moment.
Chapter 4. 2 years later.
Tandy, striding through Shanghai airport, grinned as she saw who was calling her. Seriously, dude, I just stepped off the plane. How do you time it so well? Practice, Wilder laughed. What do you expect me to do when I haven't spoken to my fiancé for at least 10 hours? Tandy laughed. That's fair enough. But I'll be back before you know it. Not soon enough. Ha ha, madman, I have work to do. Wilder chuckled. Well, if you put it like that, I guess I'll just have to come to you. Right, she said somewhat sarcastically. By the time you get here, it'll be time for me to fly home. Oh, you think? Wilder was laughing now, and suddenly Tandy heard him in stereo. Then I guess you just need to turn around. Tandy spun around to see him walking a few yards behind her. Oh my gosh. She threw herself into his arms as he spun her around. His lips were against hers. I'm sorry to intrude on your work trip, but the thought of being away from these lips, this face, this body, I couldn't do it one moment longer because I have a very important question to ask you. Tandy, grinning, knew exactly what he was about to say and started to laugh. You romantic fool. Wilder dropped to his knees, not caring about the staring people around them. Marry me. Yes. Yes, of course, you mad, mad, wonderful dreamer. I love you. And not caring who saw them, they tumbled to the ground, kissing and laughing, ready for their own happy ever after.
The end. Thank you for listening to this audiobook. We hope you have enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel.
Listen to a sneak peek for The Billionaire's Secret Desire. Chapter 1.
Amber Duplass squinted at her oldest and dearest friend as he handed her a plate of perfectly cooked eggs. Knox Renault, you are a pain in my neck. Knox, his green eyes amused, grinned at her. Well then, my work here is done. But why? Amber sighed and bunched her auburn hair up into a ponytail. You're one of the wealthiest landowners in New Orleans, an incredibly successful businessman, and, according to Forbes, one of the world's most eligible bachelors. And yet you stand in your own palatial kitchen, she gestured around the vast room, cooking me eggs for brunch yourself. Haven't you heard of chefs? Knox shook his head. He was used to this line of questioning from Amber. You know I don't like a lot of people around me, Ams. Amber forked some egg into her mouth, almost swooning at the taste. Which is why you're a pain. I'm worried that you'll become a hermit. I think hermithood arrived a while ago, Knox said mildly. Look, I know you mean well, but I'm nearly 40 and I'm set in my ways. I like being alone. He dumped a panful of eggs onto his own plate and sat down. And anyway, in a few days, the best and brightest will be here to drink my champagne and bother me all night. Gosh, why do I do this every year? He groaned and Amber laughed. Such a Grinch. She ruffled his dark curls and he grinned, though he was sighing on the inside. The Renault family had given a Halloween charity benefit since way before Knox's birth. It had been a special project of his beloved mother's. Before the tragedy, of course. Despite his solitary nature, Knox could not bear to dishonor his mother's legacy. His eyes flicked over to the framed picture of her and Teague, his adored elder brother, on the kitchen counter. Both of them dark and beautiful, laughing and hugging. Both of them gone so senselessly. The tragedy of the Renault family was known throughout Louisiana and beyond. Tynan Renault, a respected businessman, adoring husband to the Italian-born Gabriella, and heroic father to his sons Teague and Knox, had suffered a psychotic break and gunned down his wife and eldest son one night before turning the gun on himself. Knox, away at college at the time, had been destroyed. After dropping out of school and coming home to the huge plantation mansion out on the bayou, he had struggled for years to understand what his father had done. Amber and his other friends had tried to persuade him to sell the place where his mother and brother had been murdered, but Knox refused. He took over his brother's business with his friend Sandor, and together, they had made a success of it. The company, Rencar, quickly became an outlet to forget his pain, with Knox pouring 20 hours a day into the work. Luxury food importing had never been his dream, was it anyone's, but he had found something he was good at, and that was enough for him. His boyhood dreams of becoming a musician were pushed aside for something that would utterly distract him. The studio his mother had set aside for both of them to work in had stood empty for almost 20 years now, as had Knox's heart. He realized he wasn't listening to Amber now, and apologized. She rolled her blue eyes. "Knox, I'm used to you spacing out on me, but listen, this is your party. I'm just saying, why don't you try to be more gregarious for a change? These people pay a lot of money to come here." "Mostly to see the murder house," he mumbled, and Amber made an annoyed click with her tongue. "Maybe so, but the money we raise goes to a good cause, doesn't it? Something good to come out of. Damn it, Knox, you're not the only one who lost someone." To his horror, he saw tears in her eyes. He reached over and took her hand. "Ams, I'm sorry, I know. I miss Ariel too, every day." He sighed. So much pain, so much death. Amber was right, he needed to get out of this self-pitying funk. "All I ask is for you to do your part on the night. Mingle and talk to your guests." Amber's tone was calmer now, and she smiled at him, her face soft and her eyes on his, holding them for a beat too long. Knox nodded, looking away finally. "I promise." After Amber had gone, he wandered into his living room and flicked on the television. Local news station WDSU was doing a feature on Halloween New Orleans, the magical, manic mayhem of the festival the city threw every October. Knox sighed and waited for the inevitable mention of his party. "Wait for it," he muttered to himself. "Will it be the Renault family curse or the mansion with the dark secrets first?" The anchor looked serious. Of course, before the festivities kick off on Halloween night, the New Orleans elite will gather at the Renault mansion, out on the bayou. Regular viewers will know that the annual Creepy Cocktails Gala benefit is held every year at the place some locals call the mansion with a dark history. More on that after these messages. Knox clicked off the television with an annoyed flick of his hand. Same story every year. And now his guests who watched the news would be all the more curious about the only remaining Renault. Damn it. His cell phone rang and he answered it gratefully. "Sandor, man, you have impeccable timing." His friend laughed. "Any time. Listen, we may have a deal on the Laurent restaurant chain." Knox sat up. "Really?" The Laurent business was worth twice what they had offered, but had been on the market for 2 years with no interest. Knox knew if they got it at a cheap price and refurbished it, it could make them a fortune. He and Sandor had decided to branch out into buying restaurants to serve their luxury foods as a new income stream. Not that either of them needed it, but they both were bored with their business. They wanted to get their hands dirty and do something physical rather than just importing food for, well, people like them. Yep. Gustave Laurent is getting a divorce, and he wants to get rid of the property quickly. Knox was astonished. Gus is divorcing Catherine? Seems so. Seems like she was sleeping around on him. Knox made a half-amused, half-scornful noise. Like Gustave hasn't been messing around on her for years. You know Gus? Sadly, yes. Listen, I can be there in a half hour. Good, Sandor replied. And afterward, I'll spot you lunch. Deal? Knox smiled down the phone. Deal. See you then. Livia Chatelaine balanced 3 plates expertly along her left arm and carried them to the table. The 2 women and the child seated at the table smiled gratefully at her as she laid their food in front of them and returned their grins. Enjoy, folks. Let me know if you need anything else. She skirted back to another table that was waiting for their check and settled up with them quickly and with her innate friendliness. She had been working at Le Chat Noir Café in the French Quarter for 3 months now, ever since she had packed her whole life into her battered old gremlin and driven across the country from San Diego. Moriko, her best friend from college, had been in New Orleans for a year and had gotten her the job at the cafe. It didn't hurt that the owner, a handsome, dark-haired Frenchman called Marcel, had a huge crush on Moriko and would have hired anyone she recommended. Thankfully, though, Livia and Marcel had become good friends, and Livia showed up early, stayed late, and worked hard for him. In return, he gave her the shifts that fit best with her studies, and paid her enough that she could afford the tiny apartment she shared with Moriko. Livia had decided as she left San Diego that she wouldn't return to her hometown again. It held no interest for her now, and there wasn't any family left there that she cared about. An only child, her mother had died when she was young, and Livia had brought herself up. She'd worked hard at school and at various jobs to put food on the table, while her father drank himself into a stupor every night and screamed at her if she disturbed him. Livia had stopped caring years ago about the man. As far as she was concerned, he was merely the donor. What she remembered of her mother were warm, happy memories. Cancer was a killer, and it had stolen her happiness away when she was 5. Livia's last memory of her mother was of the beautiful woman kissing her goodbye one day before school, and that was the last time she had seen her. Her father hadn't let her see her after she died. Livia had put herself through college on a scholarship and by working 3 jobs, and it had become second nature to always fight and scrape for everything. It gave her energy and reason, and when she had graduated top of her class, it had all been worth it. Her tutors had been loath to let her go and had championed her to apply for postgraduate research scholarships, but it had taken Livia 4 years to finally secure an offer from the University of New Orleans. "Hey, dreamer." Moriko nudged Livia out of her reverie, and her friend smiled at her. Moriko, a tiny Japanese-American of exquisite beauty, and she knew it, hoisted herself up onto the counter. "Marcel needs a favor." Livia hid a grin. When Marcel sent Moriko to do his dirty work, it meant that, whatever the favor was, it would be a big and probably inconvenient one. "What is it?" "Well, he's been asked to cater the Renault party on Saturday." "You know which one I mean?" Livia shook her head. "Nope." Moriko rolled her eyes. "It's an annual thing Knox Renault does. He throws a Halloween gala party and gives a ton of money to charity." "Never heard of him, or it. So, what's the favor?" Livia thought she could guess. Marcel needed waitstaff. A moment later, Moriko confirmed her suspicions. He was going to hire in silver service staff, but apparently they don't want anything but canapés and cocktails. Silver service staff would cost him more than he's making, so? Livia smiled at her. "It's no problem. Usual uniform?" She pulled down on her too tight white shirt and tucked it back into the black mini she wore to serve. It barely contained her lush curves. Livia wasn't the tallest girl, but her long legs made her look taller than her 5'5" height, and her long tawny waves were her crowning glory. She had pulled her almost waist-length hair into a bun, but it was forever escaping the clips. Moriko grabbed it now and twisted it up for her. Livia shot her a grateful smile. "Thanks, boo. I really should cut it all off." "No way," Moriko said, her own shiny black hair falling in a straight curtain down her back. "I'd kill for your curls." "So, Saturday night waitressing for the rich muckety-mucks. I'll be there too. Hey, at least we get to snoop around the rich guy's house." Livia sighed to herself. She honestly didn't mind helping Marcel out, but she had very little time for rich boys with too much money. She'd had to wait on them enough in her time. She went back out to the cafe and grimaced. 2 regulars had just come into the restaurant. Speaking of rich muckety-mucks, she thought, plastering a fake smile on her face. The woman, an icy-looking blonde with bright red lipstick and cold blue eyes, looked at her dismissively. Egg white omelette with spinach and a mangotini. She didn't look at the menu once. Her companion, a suave-looking man who at least smiled at Livia and said please and thank you whenever he was in, nodded. "Same for me please, Liv. Good to see you again." Livia smiled at him. She judged him for the company he kept, but if she was fair, he was always polite to her. She knew his companion was called Odell, and her father was one of the richest men in the state. It didn't impress Livia. "You too, sir. Sure I can't interest either of you in some French fries to go with your salad?" Odell looked horrified, but her companion grinned. "Why not?" Livia grinned and disappeared into the kitchen. Marcel slunk in and smiled at her. "Thanks for Saturday, Livy. I'll pay you double." She kissed his cheek. "No problem, pal." Marcel, his eyes so dark you couldn't see the pupils, nodded to the restaurant. "I see Elsa and Lumiere are in the restaurant." Livia laughed. "You're getting your Disney all mixed up, and anyway, he's okay. But yeah, she is the Ice Queen. Don't let their wealth get to you. It was all inherited, not earned." "Oh, I know, and it doesn't bother me. Money can't buy breeding." Livia shrugged off the woman's rudeness. "I can honestly say these people and their ways don't keep me up at night, Marcel. I'm just saying because I know the man, Roan St. Mark, is Knox Renault's best friend. It's more than likely they'll be at the party on Saturday." Marcel grinned at Livia, who rolled her eyes. "Just promise me you won't tip their meals into their laps." Livia snorted. "I promise, honey." "Good girl." Livia finished out her shift, then walked home through the busy streets of the French Quarter. She had fallen in love with this city, the slow, sensual heat, the sultry, laid-back nature of the people. Strangely, for a city known for its voodoo and black magic, she had never felt uneasy walking the streets at night here. Moriko was still at work when Livia got back to their apartment, so Livia took a long hot shower, then made herself a bowl of soup, grabbing some saltines from the pack in the kitchen. As she ate, she flicked through the television channels, but soon got bored. Dumping her bowl in the sink, she washed it out, then decided to go to bed to read. She had a piano recital coming up, and she wanted to go through the score again, miming her keystrokes in the air. She fell asleep with Moriko's cat cuddling in next to her, and didn't hear her roommate come home. Out on the bayou, Knox too had fallen into a deep sleep, but his was not so peaceful. Almost instantly, the nightmares came. A woman, a beautiful young woman he knew but one whose face he could not see, was calling to him, begging him to save her. There was blood, so much blood, and he ran through the darkened mansion, wading through something, blood, to get to her. A dark, malevolent force overcame everything, stopping Knox from reaching the girl. He heard her screams cut off abruptly and knew he was too late. He sank to his knees. He felt a hand on his shoulder and looked up. His mother was smiling at him. "Don't you know you'll never save them?" she said softly. "Everyone you love will die, my beloved son. I died, your father, your brother. Ariel. You'll always be alone." Knox awoke, gasping for air in a pool of his own sweat, the certainty of his dream mother's words screaming around his mind. "Don't fall in love. Don't risk it. Don't let anyone else get hurt."
End of sneak peek. If you enjoyed listening to this preview of The Billionaire's Secret Desire, you can grab a copy by searching for The Billionaire's Secret Desire by Michelle Love. Thank you for listening to this audiobook. We hope you have enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel.